Captured by the monster, Zira sat alone in the cold metal room, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes wide with fear. The air was heavy and strange. She could smell oil and fire, and something she did not know. This was not her ship, not her planet, and not her sky. She had been taken by the monsters, the ones her people feared the most, the ones they called humans. Had heard stories when she was a child, stories of humans who ate living things not for hunger, but for fun. They burned forests. For heat, they drank water from the mouths of dying rivers. They laughed while other creatures screamed, and Zira always believed they were not real, until now she remembered the blast, the shaking, the red lights flashing on her ship, the screams of her crew, then silence, then cold, then light, and then the faces. Their faces had no color, only skin and eyes, cold eyes like stone. They had taken her without words, just needles, lights, and metal. Now she was here. There was a small light in the ceiling, and she watched it blink once, twice, and again. She counted because it was the only thing she could control. 3 seconds on, 2 seconds off, again and again. The door opened with a slow, loud sound, and Zira held her breath. She did not scream, she did not run, she only waited. A tall figure walked in. His steps were heavy, his eyes were sharp, his clothes were black and full of strange shapes and colors. Zira thought he looked like a shadow wearing armor. He stopped in front of her and looked down. She looked up and waited, for pain, for fear, for death. But he said nothing. He took out a small box, pressed it once, and then spoke. "You are safe now," he said, his voice deep but soft. "We are not going to hurt you." Zira did not believe him. She knew humans lied before they killed. She had seen it in the memories of her people. They show you peace and then take your fire. Man placed the box on the ground and stepped back. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small container. It had food in it. Something warm, something smelling sweet, but strange. Zira looked at it and then at him. He nodded once and sat down on the floor, his eyes watching her, but not with hate, more like waiting. She did not move. She only stared and listened. The ship made soft sounds like breathing metal, like a heart made of wires and steel. She could feel it all around her. "What is your name?" the man asked after a while. Zira did not answer. She had not spoken her name since the attack. Names gave power, names gave truth, and she was not ready. The man sighed and leaned his back against the wall. He looked tired, maybe from war, maybe from travel, or maybe from something deeper. "Zira could not tell. My name is Captain Reyes," he said. "I lead this ship, but I do not own you. We found you floating in an escape pod, barely alive. We took you in. We fixed your wounds. We gave you food. And now we want to talk." Zira still did not speak. She did not know what trick this was. Maybe he wanted her to speak first, so he could break her. Maybe he wanted her to thank him, so he could laugh. But then Reyes did something strange. He closed his eyes and whispered something, not in her language, but it felt like a prayer, not a command, not a lie. Just a soft sound for the stars. Zira blinked. For a moment she forgot her fear. "Why," she said, her voice dry and soft, "why not kill me?" Reyes opened his eyes and looked at her. "Because you are not our enemy," he said, "and because I believe you are important." Zira shook her head. Slowly. No one ever said she was important, not even her own kind. She was a junior scout. She flew small ships and scanned planets. She was not strong, not special, just alive. He stood up and walked to the door. He picked up the box with the food and placed it near her feet. Then turned to leave. "Eat if you are hungry," he said. "You will not be harmed, not while I am here." Door closed again with the same heavy sound, and she was alone once more. But this time something was different, not safer, not better, just different. She looked at the box. The smell of the food reached her again, warm and soft, like a memory from a place she never visited. Maybe he was lying. Maybe this was part of the trick. Maybe he wanted her to trust him, so he could hurt her later. But still she reached out slowly, with one hand, touched the box, opened it, and looked inside. Food was not moving, not bleeding, not burning. It was just there, like a gift, like an offer. She took one small bite, waited. Nothing happened. Then another and another. Zira did not know what this meant. She did not know if she would live or die tomorrow, but she knew one thing: the monster had not eaten her, not yet. Zira sat in the same cold room, her back against the wall, her legs crossed under her, her hands resting on her lap. The food container was empty. Now her hunger was gone, but her fear was not. She waited for something, maybe pain, maybe questions, maybe worse, but nothing came. Not for a long time, only silence, and the soft humming of the ship around her, a deep sound. Like metal breathing in sleep, she began counting the light blinks again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the only thing that stayed the same in this strange place. Then once again the door opened slow and heavy, and Captain Reyes stepped inside, his boots soft on the floor, his face quiet, his hands empty. He did not speak at first, he just sat down across from her, legs folded the same way, his back to the wall, like they were mirrors in a strange dream. Zira watched him, her eyes full of questions, but her lips said nothing. Silence was her shield and her weapon. Captain Reyes looked at her, then at the food box, then at the floor. He seemed to be thinking, or maybe just waiting. I did not come to hurt you, he said after a long pause. I came to talk. If you want to talk. Zira said nothing. Her eyes moved, but her body stayed still like a statue made of breath and fear. He sighed and leaned back, his voice quiet, now like wind through metal. Do you know what humans really are? He asked, his question floating in the air between them. Zira blinked, but did not answer. He smiled just a little, not with joy, but with a tired truth. Your people think we are monsters, he said. Destroyers, fire eaters, mind thieves. I have heard the stories even before we met. Zira looked away. The stories were older than her, carved into stone, passed through songs told in the dark to children who could not sleep. They said humans came from the black edge of the stars. They came hungry and cold. They took what they wanted and left ashes behind. But the man in front of her did not look hungry or cold. He looked sad. He pointed at the wall, and the wall changed. It opened like a window, not to space, but to light and green and blue. This is Earth, he said, our home. Zira saw oceans and trees and clouds and people laughing, people running, children playing, music flowing like soft wind. It was not what she expected. We fight, yes. Reyes said we make war. Yes, we are not perfect. No one is. But we also create. We build, we heal, we love. Zira looked at him now, not with fear, but with confusion. Why, she asked, why show me this? Because I want you to know the truth, he said, and because I think you are more than just a prisoner. Zira felt her chest tighten. The truth was a dangerous thing, too sharp to hold without bleeding. She spoke slowly, her voice like ice melting in silence. My people fear you because we remember what you did long ago. She said, we remember the fire, the screaming, the sky breaking. Reyes nodded and did not argue. Maybe that happened. He said maybe it did, and maybe we forgot, or maybe someone made us forget. Zira looked at him again, his eyes full of shadows and fire, and something else, something like guilt, or maybe memory. We were not ready to meet others back then, he said, not ready to share, not ready to listen. We were still children holding weapons. Zira tilted her head, the idea strange but possible now. Reyes said, we are different, not perfect, but different, and I think you are part of something bigger. She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? He stood up, walked to the door, then stopped. You were not found by chance. He said you were found because you are special, and some people want to know why. Then he left, the door closing behind him, leaving Zira with his words and the silence. She sat there thinking, her mind a storm of old fears and new thoughts. The stories of her people, the images of Earth, the voice of the man who smiled but did not smile. What did he mean by special? What did he mean by others who want to know? She looked at the empty food box, then at the wall where the Earth image had vanished. Outside this room there was a ship full of humans with strange eyes and strange ways and maybe strange hearts. Inside this room there was one alien full of doubt and dreams, and a name that meant starlight in her own tongue. Zira closed her eyes and listened, not to the hum of the ship, but to her own breath, steady and slow like the sea. She had never seen, she did not know what would happen next, but she knew the silence was changing. In that silence something was waking, something old, something buried, something dangerous, not just in the stars but in her. Zira stood near the wall of the room, her fingers touching the smooth surface where the image of Earth had appeared. her mind still spinning from what she had seen, her heart unsure. If it should hope or hide, she had never seen a planet like that. Green and blue and full of sound, a world that looked alive, not like the dying red skies of her own home, not like the cold black of space where silence ruled. "Captain." Reyes came again, this time with no box of food, no weapons, only a small cube in. His hand glowing with soft blue light. "I brought you something." He said, "Something from your own people. Something we found in your escape pod." Zira turned slowly, her eyes locked on the cube. She knew what it was, a memory stone carved with thought shaped. With song it held the voices of the past, the truths of her blood. She reached out and took it, her fingers shaking. Her breath held like a prisoner in her chest. Then she placed the cube on the floor, pressed the center, and waited. Light filled the room. Soft golden light that rose like smoke, forming shapes like ghosts from another Tima. A voice began to speak. It was her grandmother, the one who told her stories when the stars were loud and the night was long. They came from the edge of space. The voice said they came in ships of fire with eyes like glass and hearts of metal. They spoke with thunder and moved like storms. They took what they wanted and left nothing but dust. Zira watched the image of humans landing on her world, walking through the forests, burning the trees, capturing the beasts. She turned to Reyes, who stood in silence, watching with calm eyes. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice low, her hands tight. Reyes did not answer right away. He stepped forward and looked at the glowing scene, his face unreadable. "I do not know," he said. "Maybe it happened, maybe it was not us. Maybe it was something that looked like us, something older, something worse." Zira stared at him, trying to read the truth in his words, trying to see if he wore a mask or if he too was searching for answers. "The past is not clean," Reyes said. "It is full of fire and blood and broken voices. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we choose to forget." Zira turned back to the cube. The voice had changed now, another elder speaking of war, speaking of fear, speaking of the day the sky cried and the rivers turned to smoke. "They say you feed on pain," she said to Reyes. "They say you do not eat flesh, but fear that you drink sorrow and leave only silence." Reyes gave a slow breath and sat down on the floor, his hands on his knees, his eyes soft. "We do not feed," he said, "but we do hurt and we do break. And sometimes we do not stop ourselves when we should." Zira sat across from him, the cube still glowing, the room filled with the songs of her ancestors mixed with the quiet hum of the human ship. "Tell me your story," she said. "Show me your fire and your blood. Show me what made the monster inside your people." Reyes nodded and took a small device from his belt. He touched it, and the wall changed again, this time showing human history. But not with pride, with pain, wars that lasted years, cities burning, people running, hunger spreading, machines flying, skies turning red and oceans rising. "We fought ourselves before we ever met the stars." He said, "We destroyed more than we saved, but somehow we survived and we learned to look up again." Zira watched images of humans helping each other, building homes, saving forests, singing songs for peace, writing books for children who feared the night. She felt something strange in her chest, not fear, not anger, something soft, something that ached like old light reaching after years of travel. "You are not what we were told," she said slowly, "but you are also not what you want to be." Reyes looked at her with something like respect, maybe even sorrow. "That is true," he said. "We are still becoming. We are still climbing out of the fire." Zira reached for the cube and held it close, her thumb resting on the edge of the memory her people gave her. "Can we change what was told?" she asked. "Can we make new stories?" Reyes smiled just a little, only with his eyes. "We can try," he said, "but only if we tell them together." Light faded and the room grew quiet again, not empty, but full of something new, something like a beginning waiting to be written. Zira looked at the man across from her, the human, the monster, the mirror, and wondered if the stars could forgive what fire had done. Outside the room, the ship moved through space, silent as always, carrying two voices, learning to speak across the darkness. The lights above her blinked slowly, and the floor beneath her feet felt warmer than before. But Zira knew warmth could lie, just like voices and smiles and stars that shine before they die. She walked behind Captain Reyes through the long silver corridor where the walls hummed with quiet machines, each one alive in its own way, whispering codes and languages. She did not know Reyes did not speak much this time, his hands behind his back, his steps slow and heavy like someone carrying more than his own body. They reached a door that opened without sound, and inside the room was white. Too white, the kind of white that hides secrets and memories, and things meant to stay forgotten. A woman stood inside. Her skin pale, her eyes sharp, her hair tied back like a soldier. But her clothes said she was a thinker, not a fighter. This is Dr. Ellen Reyes. Said she will not harm you. She only wants to know what makes you special. Zyra stepped forward, careful but curious. The word special felt like fire and ice at the same time. It could mean power, it could mean danger, it could mean both. Dr. Ellen held out her hand, but Zyra did not take it in. Instead, she looked at the table, the machines, the glowing panels, the small chair in the middle of the room. What is this? Zyra asked, her voice clear, but not loud. A test, the doctor replied, not painful, not dangerous, just answers. We need answers. Zyra looked at Reyes. His face gave no signal, no command, only waiting. She walked to the chair and sat, her fingers gripping the edges, her back straight, her eyes wide. The doctor placed a small patch on Zyra's arm. It was warm and soft like cloth, but it moved like water. Then it lit up with colors and lines and sounds. Blood scan complete, the machine said. DNA structure active, unknown codes detected, processing now. Zyra felt nothing, no pain, no heat, only silence that stretched longer and longer until the doctor's eyes widened and her lips moved without sound. What is it? Zyra asked quietly. The doctor looked at Reyes, then back at Zyra, her voice now different, slower, sharper, filled with thought. You carry memory, not just your own, but from those before you. Generations of memory locked inside your cells, past like stories in blood. Zyra blinked, not understanding, not fully the idea, too large, too deep. That is why the dreams feel real, the doctor said, because they are not dreams, they are history alive inside you. Zyra stood slowly, her heart racing, her breath cold. She had seen ships falling, forests burning, skies breaking, but she had never lived that, not with her own eyes. So it was true, the stories were not myths, not fear, but fact carved into her bones, sung into her breath. Reyes moved closer, his face now serious more than before. There is more, he said. Your DNA holds something else, something hidden, something we cannot explain. It reacts to our technology in ways we have never seen. Zyra stared at him, her mind spinning like stars around a dead sun. What does that mean? She asked, her voice almost breaking. It means, Reyes said, that you were not just a survivor, not just a scout, you were made for something more. And I think someone knew that. Zyra turned to the doctor, who was still watching the data scroll across her screen, her fingers frozen above the controls. This is not natural, the doctor whispered. This is designed. Someone made her this way, or guided her blood to carry this map, this memory, this power. Zyra felt her knees shake, but she stayed standing. Her hands now cold, her thoughts now louder than before. Who would do this? She asked, and Reyes said nothing at first, then spoke a name Zyra had never heard before, a name that felt like smoke and metal and secrets. The Prime Circle, he said, the ones who pull the strings in shadows, the ones who choose what truth survives and what burns. Zyra stepped back, her mind full of noise, full of names and images and voices from the past, now screaming to be heard. They knew, she said. They always knew. Reyes nodded and looked away. And now they know you are awake, he said, and they will come. Machine gave one last sound and shut down its lights, fading like the last breath of a dying star. Zyra looked at her own hands, wondering what lived inside them. What fire, what light, what truth. The room felt smaller now, not from size but from weight, the kind of weight that lives in secrets. Too long buried. Reyes placed a hand on her shoulder, not heavy, not soft, just there. We will protect you, he said, or we will try. But Zyra was not sure if protection was what she needed, or if she was the danger they feared. She looked at the blank wall ahead and saw nothing but her own reflection, and for the first time, it did not look like her. It looked older, brighter, darker, a shape made from many lives, not one, and she knew the past was not done with her, not yet. Zira followed Captain Reyes down a lower hallway where the walls were no longer clean and bright, but covered in marks like old wounds hidden beneath the skin of the ship. The lights here flickered, as if they were tired of staying on, and the air smelled like metal and heat, and something older. Reyes did not speak, and Zira did not ask questions. Her heart beat heavy in her chest, her mind full of shadows, moving just behind her thoughts, each one whispering louder than the last they reached. A door that looked different, not smooth or new, but rough and dark, like it had been pulled from another ship. Another time Reyes placed his hand on the panel, and the door opened with a sigh like something waking from a long sleep. Inside was a small, round chamber with a single chair in the center, wires hanging from the ceiling, glowing softly. The walls were made of glass, but behind them was only blackness, not space, not stars, just black. "This is where the truth lives," Reyes said, his voice quiet, almost respectful. "This is where we see what memory hides and what history forgets." Zira stepped inside slowly, her feet almost refusing to move, her breath short, her eyes locked on the strange chair that looked like a throne and a trap at the same time. "You said I carry memories," Zira said, "but why do they feel like dreams? Why do they feel like someone else lived them?" "Because they did," Reyes said, "and because now they live in you." Zira turned to him, her voice shaking like wind trapped in a cave. "Happens if I sit in that chair, you will see," he said. "You will remember, and you will understand." She looked at the chair again, then at her hands, then at the door behind her, then back at the chair, and she walked forward step by step as if the floor was made of ice and she could fall with a single mistake. She sat, the chair adjusted to her shape like it was built just for her. The wires moved like snakes of light and gently touched her temples, her spine, her wrists. "Close your eyes," Reyes said, "and breathe." She did, and the chamber went silent. No hum, no flicker, no breath. Then light exploded behind her eyes, not pain, not sound, but light, and it pulled her down into a place that was not a place. She saw a world burning, not hers, not Earth, but another, full of towers made of crystal and skies that shifted color with thought. She saw creatures like stars walking with voices like music, and then she saw them fall, not by humans, not by her people, but by something with no face, no name, no body. It fed on fear, it drank memory, it moved like smoke and screamed like silence, and wherever it went the light went out and never returned. She saw one of her ancestors running through the chaos, holding something glowing, hiding it inside a cave before being taken by the dark. She saw humans too, screaming, fighting, falling, not attacking, but defending themselves from the same invisible fire. Then she saw a room just like the one she sat in, and a chair just like the one she sat in, and someone else in it, not her, not human, not alien, but something in between. The memories moved faster now, too fast to hold, too fast to understand, where peace lies. Truths, stars, exploding names, forgotten faces, remembered promises, broken whispers, repeated again and again. Protect the memory, protect the seed, protect the one who carries the blood. Then silence. Ira opened her eyes, her body frozen, her hands clenched, her skin wet with cold sweat, her breath ragged. Reyes stood beside her, not speaking, just watching. "What did you see?" he asked finally. She looked at him, her eyes wide, her voice raw. "Not monsters," she said, "not heroes, something else, something worse, something deeper, something that hides behind all stories." Reyes nodded and helped her out of the chair, her legs weak, but her heart now heavy with purpose. "You saw the enemy," he said, "the real one, the one we both forgot." Zira shook her head. "No, not forgot, erased," she said, "buried, replaced by fear, by hate, by war between us. So we never looked beyond." Reyes looked into the dark glass walls, his reflection faint and flickering. "They used us," he said, "they fed from us, made us fight, made us blind." Zira felt the memory still inside her, like fire that would never cool, and she knew now why the others feared her, why they called her dangerous, because she carried the truth, and the truth was a weapon sharper than any blades. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we tell the story," Reyes said. "Now we find others who remember. Now we fight the ones who live in shadows." Ira turned to the chair once more, the wires now still, the lights dim, but the echo of the past still strong in the air. She reached out and touched it gently, like touching the grave of someone she never knew, but somehow loved. The memory is not dead, she said, and neither am I. And with that, she walked out of the chamber into the hall where the lights flickered once more, but this time not from fear, but from something waking. Zira stood at the center of the ship's research deck, her eyes staring at the stars beyond the glass wall, but her thoughts lost in the darkness behind those stars. Not the kind of darkness that hides in shadows, but the kind that watches, the kind that waits. Captain Reyes stood beside her, arms crossed, his face quiet but hard, like a statue built to carry secrets, his mind still full of what they had seen inside the memory machine. Images too deep to forget and too dangerous to speak. They are not gone, Zira said, her voice like wind moving through ruins. They are still here, watching, listening, feeding. Reyes turned to her slowly, his eyes sharp as fire and cold as stone. You mean the ones in the memories, the ones without shape? Zira nodded. The names were long forgotten, if they were ever known at all, but the feeling of them, the sound of them, that was still alive in her blood, in her bones, in her breath. They do not eat like us, she said. They do not want food, they want fear, they want war, they want chaos. They want pain, because pain makes people loud, and loud minds are easier to taste. Reyes walked toward the center panel and touched a screen. It lit up with maps of space, paths of ships, networks of colonies, and data flowing like rivers made of light. They hide behind systems, they hide behind wars, they hide behind. Hey, he said, and they use both sides to keep the fire burning, so they can drink the smoke. Zira felt her skin cold, as if the stars were no longer light, but eyes without lids, watching without blinking. Dr. Ellen entered the room holding a small device, her face pale, her hands tight around the object, like it could break the moment she loosened her grip. We found this on the deep signal logs, she said, a pattern not human, not alien, something else. Something we did not place there. Zira walked over slowly and looked at the device. It showed waves of sound, but not sound, patterns of thought, like voices without mouths, speaking without words. She listened and felt her heart twist, because she had heard it before, not in this life, but in the echo of the memory machine, in the fire dream, in the scream of the forgotten. It is them, she whispered. They are calling each other. They are waking. Again Reyes took the device and stared at the moving patterns, each one a whisper, each one a bite. So they never left, he said. They only went quiet, so we would stop looking. Zira turned away, her hands clenched, her breath sharp, because now she understood. Now it was clear. They made her, they shaped her blood. They planted the memories so she would carry them through time, not to destroy, but to warn, to remind, to light the fire that reveals the hidden. We cannot stop them alone, she said. They have roots in every mind, every system, every lie we believe. Reyes stepped forward, his voice calm but full of storm. Then we show the truth, we show all of it, not just to our leaders, not just to the brave, to everyone, to every planet, to every voice. Dr. Ellen looked afraid, her lips parted, but her voice slow. If we do that, they will come for us first. Let them come, Zira said, because I am not afraid, not anymore. The lights above flickered, and for a second, the room felt smaller, heavier, like something had entered unseen. Reyes turned to the glass wall and stared at the stars, as if searching for a face behind their light. We have to move, he said. We cannot stay here. Not now. Zira nodded and touched the panel, her fingers quick, her thoughts faster. There is a place, she said, an old station near the silent belt, lost during the last war. No signals, no traffic, no memory. It might still be clean. Reyes gave a short nod and looked at Ellen, who was already moving, already packing, already knowing what would come next. Within minutes, the ship turned its path away from the known roads, away from the burning maps, and into the space where sound does not travel and eyes do not reach. Zira stood on the command bridge, her hand on the rail, her eyes locked on the path ahead. She thought of her people who still feared shadows, who still believed monsters came only from Earth and never from silence. She thought of the humans who still chased war, who still trusted orders, who still looked away when the stars whispered too loudly. And she thought of the creatures who watched them all, who fed on the fear, who smiled with hunger when the lights went out. We are not food, she said softly, and not just for them, but for anyone who thinks silence means safety. Reyes stepped beside her and looked into the dark, his voice steady like the ground before a storm. Then we make noise and we wake the ones who forgot how to fight, and the ship flew deeper into the void, not to hide, but to find the truth that waited where no one dared to look. The old station floated like a dead god in the dark, its surface cracked, its lights broken, its voice long forgotten, but Zira felt something inside it, something alive, something waiting. Captain Reyes stood at the airlock helmet, on armor-sealed eyes. Sharp, he watched the old codes blink green as the doors opened with a hiss like the breath of something ancient and cold. Zira followed behind, her own armor lighter, but her spirit heavier. She had seen what lived behind memory. She had heard the whispers that crawled like spiders across the mind, and now they had come to end it. Ellen stayed behind on the ship, watching every signal, every sound, ready to send word if the shadows moved too close, but even she knew they were already inside. Not just the station, but everything. They entered the core chamber, once a command room, now silent. Dust hanging like ghosts frozen in the air, but the machines were not dead, not all of them. One still blinked, one still called, and Zira answered. She placed her hand on the console, and the light spread across the walls, a wave of blue fire waking the memory inside metal and glass and silence itself. Images came without sound, first shapes, shadows, teeth, eyes, not human, not alien, just wrong, like something that did not belong in light. Reyes raised his weapon, but Zira lowered it, her voice calm, her eyes wide. Weapons do not work on fear, she said. You cannot shoot hunger, you must show it its own face. The machine listened and opened more, not just to her hand, but to her blood, to her memory, to the map carved in her cells, and the truth filled the room. Like rising heat, they had come before, not to rule, not to conquer, but to feed. They had no name, only hunger, no shape, only shadow, no voice, only reflection. They moved through thoughts, through fear, through war, and they had found both in humans and in Zira's kind, and they had danced between them for generations, unseen, untouched, worshipped in secret, cursed in silence. But now the pattern had broken, now the memory had awakened. Now the girl who carried stories in her blood had stepped into the dark, not as prey, but as fire. The lights flickered, then burst, and the room filled with a sound that was not sound, like breathing, like laughing, like hunger itself waking. They are here, Reyes said, and Zira nodded but did not run. She stepped forward, the center of the chamber now lit with a red glow. A shape forming from the smoke, not real, not solid, but felt, seen, known. You remember us, it said. Not with words, but with weight, and Zira stood tall. I do, she answered, and I do not fear youth. Shape shifted, grew, eyes open, teeth appeared, not to bite, but to scare, to remind her what she was meant to be. Prey, weak, soft, but she did not move. She expected the human to eat her long ago, to end her, to tear her apart like the stories told. But not like this, not with truth, not with pain, not with a mirror. Reyes stepped beside her and raised a device glowing with the same light from the memory machine, a signal not of attack but of truth, and he pressed it. Walls around them opened like petals of a dark flower and showed every war, every scream, every lie fed by the creatures. Now shaking, now shrinking in the light. You used us, Reyes said. You made us fear each other so we would never see youth. Shape screamed, not with sound, but with hate, with hunger denied, with shadows unraveling. You cannot stop fear, it said, and Zira smiled, not cruel, not proud, but true. No, she said, but we can name it, and that takes away your mouth. And with that she opened her mind, her memories, her fire, and let it pour into the machine, into the station, into the stars, a wave of memory so loud it burned away the silence. Every system, every ship, every world heard it, not a warning but a truth, not a scream but a light. The feeding stopped, not everywhere, not forever, but enough to make the creatures recoil, enough to make the shadows blink, enough to give the galaxy a moment to breathe. The shape shattered into dust and the light returned, and the room was still. Reyes looked at Zira and saw not just a girl, not just an alien, but a voice that echoed beyond time. What now, he asked, and Zira looked up at the stars. Now we teach them to remember, she said, so they never become food again. They returned to the ship where Dr. Ellen waited, her eyes wide. Her voice soft. Did it work? She asked. Zira nodded. For now, she said, but truth is not a sword. It is a seed, and we must grow it together. Reyes smiled and once it was not heavy with pain. You expected us to eat you, he said, and Zira laughed. Just once I did, she said, but not like that. And the ship turned toward the stars, not to run, not to fight, but to speak, because the silence was broken, and the truth had learned to fly.